after speaking affirmations over yourself. The more you hear it, the more you believe that it's true.
And welcome to Premier Fitness. I'm Gene Williams, your yoga instructor, and I'm here to tell you about the benefits of yoga.
Hey, y'all. Thank you for joining us on Where's the Love today. I am super excited. We have a guest today. Listen, we have been talking about bullying in the educational system, bullying with educators. Yes, it happens with adults too. For those of you who don't believe that educators can bully, first I want to tone my excitement down and bring on my co-host, my son, Gene Williams.
Whoa.
Hey, son.
How you doing?
I am wonderful. I am excited. So,
We got a great show coming.
yes, absolutely. So I was telling them that we have been talking about bullying in the educational system with educators, K through 12th grade, kindergarten through 12th grade. And we're still going to continue to talk about it. Not today, because today we have a guest. We have an educator in the educational system right now who has experienced some bullying as an adult and as a child. For those of you who think that adults don't bully, absolutely.
And as an educator.
Yes, and as an educator. So that's a bonus for us. We got somebody that's experiencing it, that's working it, y'all.
Right.
You want to add anything from last week's show?
No.
Okay. Sorry, I caught you off guard.
Hold on.
All right, y'all. So we are going to bring to the stage, with no further ado, Irisha Williams from Educational Ties, which is her business. So welcome, Irisha Williams.
Hi, Gene. Hi, Stephanie. Hi. I'm great. How are you guys?
We are wonderful and excited about today's show. So, sometimes people think you just talk, you're just talking. That don't actually happen. So we're excited to have you on to prove that, yes, and you're only one person out of millions of teachers, but still we have proof. It does happen in the educational system and with the educators and with adults. All of that.
Exactly. And thank you guys so much for having me. You guys are beautiful people. And I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you guys today and just to be in your presence. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So tell us
your presence as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Irisha Williams, born and raised here in sunny Southern California. I currently live in the Inland Empire, which is about 40 minutes outside of Los Angeles, which most people, when you think California, you think LA or San Francisco. So I'm definitely on the south end of the west side, as Gene mentioned earlier. And so West Side.
West
All right. And it never rains in Southern California. That's what I heard. I don't know if y'all heard that or not.
I mean, it's a great song and it will go down in history. However, it is not true. Not true at all. I was at a track meet yesterday with my daughter with an umbrella, trying to stay, dry because it rained from 9 o'clock in the morning when the track meet started till mid-afternoon. So it definitely rained here in Southern California for sure.
So that's a myth.
It is a myth and a great song. Like I said, a great
Right,
song.
exactly. Tony.
So finish telling us about yourself, because I rudely interrupted because that song
It's
started
okay.
playing in my head as soon as you said Southern California.
No, yes, thank you. And so, yeah, I've been in the education space since I can remember. My mother's mother was an educator, and
Wow.
she would sit with us during the summer and have us work on our ABCs and our one, two, threes because, being a grandmother who was raised through Jim Crow and all of that, education was our way, up and out,
Yes.
of our situation. And so education kind of runs through my veins.
Yeah.
And so, it's always been a part of me, and it continues to be a part of me. And so I got into the space of being a special education teacher in 2006, and have been teaching students with special needs, and those that have been diagnosed and those that haven't been diagnosed since then. So it's been a journey, of course, because working with students with challenges can be challenging, but it's a wonderful field, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
So do you find it more challenging to work with those that have been diagnosed or those that are undiagnosed?
That's a great question. Yes, sometimes it's easier to work with a child or even an adult that is aware that they have challenges,
Okay,
right?
great.
Because if you're aware of something, you're more apt to take in information to help you, either work with it or around it.
I love that.
Yes. And so in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I found a lot of parents that were trying to find answers to how to work with their child and teach them how to learn and go through that digital learning that we had to do during that time. And so that's where I really started my business, Educational Ties, working with parents in their home to learn their child, learn their disability, and help them to build a great school plan and a great home plan. And so working with parents and children, adults, that are aware that they have needs is a lot easier than it is to work with someone who is unaware and doesn't think that there's a problem.
Right.
Mhm.
So while you were talking, I had the thought of, not being able to imagine, children with disabilities being able to, having to deal with the words aren't coming, how to deal with the thought of operating on, functioning with the computer. Because even those that, the younger, early elementary school, they had challenges, those without disabilities, they had challenges working on the computer.
Yes.
And so I can't even imagine those with disabilities and the challenges that they experience. So it's great that you saw the need and said, hey, I got to develop Educational Ties because these people need my help. Don't it feel great to know when you help somebody,
It
when you,
absolutely does.
yes,
It absolutely does. And, getting on calls with parents, hearing their struggles about, the IEP team is telling me this, but I know my child needs more help, and
Mhm.
saying, you are right. Let's work through this and figure out how we can communicate what you feel, what you see, and what your child needs
yes.
is the best feeling in the world to help parents realize that. And so it was a great feeling, and it continues to be a great feeling as I continue to help parents and children.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
awesome.
great. So the IEP, tell them, I know you told us what it is and I'm looking at it, but
Great
explain,
job.
tell tell us what that is and tell us what it means. What is it for?
Yes. So an IEP stands for an individualized education plan. And so it is a plan that an IEP team, which consists of the parent, school staff, and a teacher, a principal, and any other members that can provide support to the child that they may need, like occupational therapy, physical therapy, different things like that. That is the IEP team. And they come together to create a plan to support a child in the school setting with goals, accommodations, sometimes modifications, to help the child thrive and gain educational benefit and progress in a classroom setting.
That's great.
So that is what an IEP stands for.
Thank you for breaking that down.
Absolutely.
Gene, what questions do you have?
So I was going to ask you. So what? Well, you kind of touched on it already about. So the question is, what prompted you to start Educational Ties? You kind of touched on it, but if you can go a little more in depth.
Yes, of course. So again, through the pandemic, you could easily see on Facebook or Instagram, parents basically pulling their hair out, trying to figure out how the district was going to provide educational support via online, right? Like, how do you have a child that needs OT services or occupational services to help them hold a pencil, trace and follow letters? How do you do that over Zoom?
Right.
And how does the district provide that service over Zoom?
Yeah.
And so, in order to help support parents, I would meet with the parent, talk with them about, what services their IEP suggested. And then I'm not an OT, but I've worked with OTs, occupational therapists, and I could give them some guidance on websites to go to that have, letters that they can print out and help their student at home, how to go through that process. Giving them advice on if the IEP team is saying, oh, we can't provide that service for you because it's digital, right? And it needs to be in person. So how to advocate for your child and say, hey, district, I understand that you can't send an occupational therapist to my home because of the health concerns. However, I would like to request that you speak to the OT and have them send me, paperwork, or have them send me an app that I can go to, and you will pay for it. Since, we're in this digital space right now, you provide the tools that my child needs at home in order to reach the educational benefit that you lawfully have to provide because of the IEP. And
Right.
so those were, some of the conversations that I was having with parents.
That's great. Because people, when we don't know what to do and we don't have the answers, we definitely need somebody to advocate for us. That's
Exactly.
so important. In addition to what you just shared, do you mind sharing, because there's a journey for you as far as special needs, and the reason why you got on that journey, like your college and your personal experience, as much as you feel comfortable sharing?
How I got on the journey of working with students with special needs?
Yes.
Oh, sure. So when I was in high school, I was a tutor. And so, like I said, education's always been in my blood. And then when I went to college, I went to UCLA here in California. Go Bruins. Even though we lost yesterday in our basketball game, but it's fine. Still a great institution, still amazing.
Yeah.
And so while at UCLA, I became part of a program called the Career-Based Opportunity Program. And it was for college students to go into inner city schools and tutor and mentor.
Yeah.
And so through that process, I met great teenagers, because we worked out of high school. and just teaching them how to self-advocate, teaching them that, learn about yourself so that when you go to study, you won't study like someone else. You'll study the way that works best for you so that you can meet the grades and meet the goals that you have for yourself.
Yes.
And once I graduated from UCLA, I worked at a before and after school kindergarten program, which was great. I just was like, little people are cool, but I'm like, okay, I'm kind of getting burnt out because I was there for 2 years. And then my friend brought an opportunity to me about an internship that was being ran through the Los Angeles County Office of Education, which is here in Los Angeles. And I joined that program, and it was a teacher internship program. But you had to work with students with disabilities. And I was like nervous at first because at that time I hadn't worked with kids with disabilities. It was, kindergartners, and they can get rambunctious, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so, I was nervous going in, but she told me, she's like, I've worked with these kids for 8 years. They're just like other kids. You'll do fine because you love kids. So I was like, okay. Joined the program in 2006, fell in love with the students, and it's history after that. Here we are, 15, almost 18 years later, and I'm still in education with students with special needs because they are just special people. They really are.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jean, you want to ask one of the questions?
So in school you studied psychology. What prompted your studies in psychology and becoming a behavioral specialist?
Yes, great question. So psychology came to me by way of a summer school class that I took in between, my freshman year and my sophomore year. You're looking down the list and you have to choose a class, under the category of humanities. And I'm like, psychology, the study of how people work. Interesting. So I took that class, and that really opened up my mind to, developmental delays, psychology of a child, child development. And so it just propelled me into a psych major. And once I joined that psych major is where I found the career-based opportunity program. And it just flew me all the way into education after that. Because I originally went to UCLA thinking I was going to be an engineer. Boy, was I wrong. I guess I'm still an engineer, but more an engineer of education and helping people figure their way through things, not, buildings and mechanicals and stuff like that.
Right.
So once you learned the psychology piece, you additionally added the behavior piece. Is that how it went?
Yes. So once I became a teacher, I was, in the classroom doing great. And again, my friend was like, hey, there's this program. And I had already been thinking about getting a master's because financially, in the education sector, it makes sense. The more education you have, the more pay you're able to get. So I had already been thinking about a master's program, but the opportunity was to do a master's that had an emphasis in teaching people and applied behavior analysis. And so that was very attractive to me because I already worked with students that had behaviors. And so it just seemed like a great fit. And in addition to how I was supporting students in the classroom already, knowing more about the mechanics of behavior, why behavior happens, what kind of need they're trying to fill with exhibiting these behaviors, and how to create a plan to help mitigate those behaviors was perfect.
Wow.
Awesome.
You was
So
being
yeah,
set
you're
up.
still an engineer.
Right.
Exactly.
And you were being set up for the next step every time. Every time you took one step. And that's something that I see in my life right now is, you got to do one thing first. Take a
Hmm.
step in that, and then other things will present themselves when it's time for that thing. And so that's what I just heard, from you without you saying those words. You opportunities just keep coming, and that's how it is. As long as you're sitting not doing anything, nothing comes. But once you take a step with what and another way to say it is, what do you have in your hand? What you have in your hand is the step that you take right now. That's what knowledge do you have right now. Do something with that, and then other things will come because in faith, you took and did the one thing that you understood at the time.
Right.
I just
Right.
That excites the heck out of me just knowing that. Because like I said, right now that's my experience. And then I think about, when I was writing my first book, that's how it happened. I wrote the book, then I edited the book, then I needed to get the cover done, and so that way came for that, and then I needed to um, put the book together, to self-publish the book, and so that came. I needed to know how to pre-sell the book. That came. So when it was time for every piece, the things that I needed and the person attached to the thing.
Right. So,
Oh, I'm going to church in my mind. It
You're on
just,
the praise dance on the head.
right.
right. Yes, because
Yeah.
it's so true. It's all connected. And
Yes.
once you're obedient in one space,
Woo,
that
yes.
opens up for other areas, of obedience for you to be able to step into. And
Yes.
that's absolutely the process. That's how
Yes.
we met.
Yes. Actually, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm grateful for that, because you have been, even though we don't get to talk that much, the things that you have shared with me and the information that you have shared with me has been very helpful. It's been a guide to take, the next
Mm.
step. Okay, so here's another piece. And then so everything that is added, to the things you already know, really helps, and it can just be a small piece or it can be a big piece. But what do? Here's something else. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to let it sit
Right.
there, or are you going to do something with it? So
Exactly.
it just excites the heck out of me knowing, because it's part of the process. It's
Hmm.
part of the process of whatever it is you're doing. So,
Exactly.
Gene, you have something else?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out I want to phrase this, but with your company, you're a consultant for educators as well as uh, a consultant for parents, teaching parents how to parent their children with special needs. So how would that process go? Like can you kind of run us through like how you would maybe put together a consulting program?
Yes, that's a great question. So for teachers, I do currently support teachers in the classroom through my 9 to 5 job. Um, Outside of that, because I have those skills of helping teachers create their classroom plan, how to incorporate, diversity, inclusion, equity, classroom management, restorative practices in their classroom. Through an educational consulting program, I offer all of those planning skills, and I teach teachers how to do that. A lot of our teachers come out of teacher programs really unprepared to actually manage or engineer, if we can use that word, a cohesive and effective classroom. Because honestly, a classroom is kind of a business. It's an ecosystem, right? If you think
Right.
about ants, they are the most organized
Mm-hmm.
animal on the planet,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
They have their head staff, they have their staff that works under those people that know what to do and where to go. And so being able to engineer a classroom is an art form, and it's something you don't have to be, but some people need that building and structure in order to do it effectively. Some people kind of have a natural gear towards that because they're like really nurturing and they're structured. Others have to be taught and follow a structure. Right. So they hire people like me to come into their classroom, assess how they're currently doing, give them some pointers on how they can improve, and then continue to coach and monitor them through developing that plan that we work together to devise.
That's great.
Awesome.
Wow. Mark has a couple questions. Jean, did you want to add something to that piece?
No, she hit on everything I was thinking about.
Okay, good. So Mark has a couple questions. So one of them is, why are schools so quick to diagnose us with mental and behavioral issues? Not saying we don't have the problems in our community.
That is a great question. That is a multi-layered question. And I would venture to say that if you compare a school that is in a rural, predominantly Black community versus a rural predominantly white area, you would have differences in who qualifies for what.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the majority of our schools are predominantly white institutions with African American students. And when you're in that space, they don't really understand our kids.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can say that because one of my sons, he was born in 2005. Great kid. He's 18 now, about to graduate from high school, but the beginning was a struggle. In preschool, he was already exhibiting some behaviors in pushing kids, biting kids. So we're like, okay, what's going on here? And I'm like, I know my son. He thinks that he's 5, even though he's only 3. So he's like, I can push these little babies around and I can get away with it. So I would ask you, as the mom who knows my son, can you put him in the class with the 4 and 5-year-olds? As soon as they put him in the class with the 4 and 5-year-olds, no more biting, no more pushing, because in his mind, he's older than these little babies down here. Had I not been a mom who, had training in special education and kind of knowing how to accommodate, also knowing my child, because I spend a lot of time with him. I've, taught him his 1, 2, 3s and his ABCs. I'm aware of his abilities and the kind of kid he is. I could advocate for that. Moving forward, elementary school. He's, again, not wanting to do work, not wanting to listen, doing all of these things. So I work with a teacher to create a behavior plan for him. Now, this is unofficial because you can go through a process to have your child formally assessed and see if they have behavior, challenges based on what the researchers say, right? So I'm building these plans with these teachers. We're doing sticker charts and incentive forms, and he's bringing home a daily, weekly chart of his behavior. Every Friday, we're going to get Slurpees because he did a great job. Or if he's not doing so well, we're sitting down and we're talking about the situation, what he could have done better, how he can respond, and all of these things. This happens from kindergarten to 6th grade. Every year, we're talking to this kid about what he's doing, what we need him to do, and how he's doing it, rewarding him or having conversations. 6th grade, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and get an evaluation because I just want to see what's going on. We did the evaluation. We get to the meeting where they talk about their findings and what their plan would be for my son. Come to find out, based on the assessments that researchers have, created, he falls under a category of disability called oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. You will see it. And that mark falls along those lines of behavioral issues, right? So they're telling me, your son, he is in the 7th grade and he reads at a 10th grade level. Your son's in the 7th grade and he does math at the college level. Your son is in 7th grade and da, 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 da. I'm like, okay. When you look at the qualifications for oppositional defiant disorder, there are 5 areas that he can qualify under that would say, yes, he has this disability, 5, or 0, no, he doesn't. This kid falls right in the middle. He has 3 of the 5 things that would qualify him for an IEP, or individual education plan, through the school. So after a 2-hour meeting, I told them, thank you for the information. I do not want to accept your offer of FAPE, which is free and appropriate education, based on the school and what they would need to offer. If I said, yes, I want you to categorize my child under this disability and provide them services. So families in our community, we can go through that process of seeing the assessments on what they say our child has. We do not have to accept that offer. And most parents don't know that they can say no, thank you. Because those plans, that information that you get from all of these psychologists that have done these assessments and created this, these DMS-5, the Department of Mental Health says that this is the criteria for autism. This is the criteria for oppositional defiance disorder. This is the criteria for, ADHD. Those are all great tools to gain information about what your child could possibly have as far as a mental or developmental disability. You do not have to accept that plan that the school recommends. So if more parents knew that they didn't have to accept it, we would have less diagnoses, for one. That's on the parent side. We don't have to accept it. What you can do is take that information that the team gives you, work with a professional in your home, and help create a plan. You can take that information that the school gives you and work with a teacher and say, hey, let's create an informal plan that can help this child while he's in your classroom. Some parents will agree. Some teachers, will agree to that plan because it's going to benefit them.
Right.
Right? Because if I know Johnny is triggered by pink pencils, then I, as a mom, I can give you all blue pencils.
Right.
It's okay. It's going to help you, and it's going to help Johnny because he's not going to be triggered and have a behavior, and it won't happen in your class. So of course, that's a very simple explanation for things that are much more complicated than a pink pencil. But just to get you thinking about, things like that. The second thing for schools is that a lot of them don't know, they don't have answers for behavior. That's the bottom line. And just like Stephanie, you and I have been talking about, a lot of schools don't have the answer for bullying because they're so big of an institution, and bullying is a microcosm, right? Yeah. It's this small isolated area of their district where things are happening. And if you don't have staff to help mitigate and support those things, they're going to continue to happen.
Yeah.
And so most districts don't have people like myself, people like some of the other educators that we've met, Stephanie, through other programs that can come in and say, hey, this is how you most effectively work with students of color. You have to build a relationship with them.
Yeah.
I tell my son's teachers all the time, ask him how he's doing today. Because if you don't, you you
yourself
might
up.
get a different, you might get a different child today than you did yesterday. But it's just a quick, hey T, how you doing? And he'll just give you a head nod, good. But he knows that you know what I mean? Like it's little things, little things
Make a big difference.
Yeah.
make a huge difference. But if there's no one at the top teaching these systems to teachers, to principals, to coaches, then it's going to continue to be this overdiagnosis of our, children, because it's a lack of understanding and a lack of awareness that a lot of school districts just aren't willing to look at or change.
Yeah.
Girl, the
Sorry,
information
I know that was a long answer to a small
we
question.
needed that. We needed that. I mean, it makes me think about, the time when ADD was a thing and getting, putting kids on Ritalin, and people just saying, okay, because I don't know what else to do to calm them down. Man, just from what you just said, if we just take the time to find out what the heck triggers this, what makes this happen, just like you just said, and it just made me smile big when you said, you told the teacher, if you just say, how you doing, T, every day, everything's gonna be all right.
Exactly.
That's so small. That's
It
such a
is.
small thing, but it's so huge to your son.
It is so huge. And I meet a lot of teachers that are like, that's too much work. I can't, but you can.
Right.
Which is more, right? You have to really pick your battles. Which is more? Saying hello to every student that comes through your door, or having, what are they called? Battles and struggles with kids to get them to do what you feel like they need to do in your class.
Yeah.
It's a simple formula that really takes the willingness and the heart to do. Luckily, all of my son's teachers have been amazing. They take my feedback and they implement it. And my son has grown and matured. So those two things coupled together, right, have made for a great educational experience for him that sadly, but joyfully will be coming to an end in May as far as high school, is concerned.
Actually, I
So
have a
Mark
question.
said something. Go ahead, Gene.
So I've noticed that with what you're saying, a lot of your mothering technique goes into education, and vice versa. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree. I would absolutely agree. Yes, and that's why I say I have the luxury of being an educator who is also a mom.
Right.
Because those education, trainings that I go to and the skills that I gain from those have absolutely helped me with my kids, and vice versa. The experiences that I've had with my daughter and my son, well, I have two sons and a daughter. The experiences that I've had being their mother has also helped me in the classroom.
Awesome.
So it's been a perfect, marriage combination.
Right. Symbiotic relationship.
Exactly.
So
Mark has good questions in the chat. I just looked
you
over.
answer
I was like,
them as you see them. You can go ahead, because there was one about college, and I can't see it now.
Oh, he says that he was diagnosed with dysgraphia well after secondary school. Yeah, that a lot of us adults go undiagnosed for a very long time. And if you had that diagnosis in high school, you can think back like, oh, it would have been this much easier had I known that writing was a challenge for me, right? Or my dysgraphia shows up in this way. So let me advocate for myself with my teachers and say, hey, I have this thing where it's hard for me to do X. So is it okay if I do it this way instead? And I've been teaching this to my daughter. So many teachers are more apt to give you the things that you need if you advocate for yourself. If they don't know what you need, they won't know how to help you.
Yeah,
Right.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you can answer whichever one you want to answer.
Well, I was going to pop in and just kind of
Like,
clarify it for y'all and everything. But yeah, the dysgraphia, Miss
oh,
Williams
okay.
and everything was
Yes, he
actually
says that
quite
he hates that we
interesting.
got away from the village concept, and I feel you on that, Gene. I just love having a village of people to help educate a group of kids because it does take a village. And with that said, I'm not sure if I shared this with you, Stephanie, but I am in the process of building my program to open a micro school here in 2024.
Woo!
And for those who don't know what a micro school is, it is really just a private school that is offered to a small number of students. And my particular program is going to specialize in helping students with really specific learning disabilities, kind of ADHD, those that need a different type of environment to help meet their best learning needs. So I'm super excited about that.
Woo!
And it
No, you didn't
definitely,
tell me
Congratulations.
about that. Yay! Woo, woo, woo.
That's
So my
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah,
it is. So
I
my
was just going
thing
to
is
add
to
really
tell you,
quickly in there everything. This is actually ironic, Stephanie, because there's another show that's going to be airing. So I think we're going to roll it out on Tuesday, but it's a friend of mine that is in the Afrocentric space. So she has actually got a school called Saint Sia, and she definitely teaches from that African lens of us understanding our history and understanding some of the history from the African
wow.
continent and all along those lines. So the Mama Noni show, I think, is the tentative name. But we were actually just having a pre-meeting here at the Haytide Center earlier this morning here in Durham. But she was actually giving an example
Wow.
similar to what you were talking about, Miss Williams, because she was talking about how she has this child that is very good at maps. Like he can put down a map and put it down instantaneously and all along those lines. But he is not all that great at rhythm. So like they will have some classes in drumming, which he's not always great at. And so one of the things that she tries to do as an encouragement is that she is very disciplined in the way that she doesn't allow her students to kind of, speaking of bullying, to bully each other because everybody has their different gifts. So this guy, like you give him a map, I think he might have missed the stake in Louisiana and Mississippi, but other than that, it was almost a perfect United States map. He did almost a perfect South American map,
Wow.
and now he's working, I think, on Oceania or some of those around Australia and stuff like that. But he's got that kind of photographic memory that he's able to do that. But that's his gift. But when he has to do the rhythm, not as much so and everything. So she was telling her folks not to have that kind of, which we know kids will do. They'll try to tease them, and that's a form of bullying. But she
Yep.
tries to encourage them not to do that, and will, as she said, I'll give them a very serious cross eye if they try to like do that whole attitude of bully one way or the other, because they all have different gifts, and that's what she tries to encourage and all along those lines. So like I said, I think that show will roll out Tuesday. But another friend who's been on this network, and I was just wondering your thoughts about it, because Kelly has been a guest both on my show as well as other shows. She has some kids that are in that whole panda notion, which is definitely people that have been having certain illnesses and certain neurological things that impacts their behavior and all along those lines. And so she's actually got a son, and I'm not speaking out of school, that is in the correctional system because the schools never really diagnosed him and all along those lines. And she is a mother. I think she's a mother of 3 as well, because I think she's got 2 sons and a daughter also, if I'm remembering correctly. But they all handle it differently and everything. So I just wondering your thoughts about Panda, if you had any, and also your thoughts around how we oftentimes the school systems are not prepared to deal with a lot of these issues themselves. And I just wondered your thoughts around it, because I do think that the school systems aren't even, many of them don't even know what a panda is. I didn't know what a panda was until my friend Kelly told me about it. And I'm not talking about the bear. It's actually a clinical
like,
diagnosis.
panda. Yeah, I actually am not familiar with Panda, which is fine, but I am familiar with schools not being equipped to handle students that have actual diagnosed behavioral issues, like schizophrenia, Panda, dual personalities. Like schools don't even have full-time mental health counselors. You know, they
Right.
may have one that they consult with, that they bring in whenever a child, you know, may display those types of symptoms, but there's like no one on site that can help that child right at that moment. And that is a huge gap in the education system, because I've helped to place, each year that I've been a teacher specialist, I also work with non-public schools,
Mhm.
which is a way that districts contract with non-public schools that help support students that have those real, you know, defined behavior issues like schizophrenia, like panda, you know, like dual personalities, those types of things, because the school is not set up, they're not designed for to be able to support kids with those types of needs.
Yeah. I just,
And so it's a tough situation. I mean, we've had a handful of kids that have had to go into residential treatments because that program offers things like horse therapy, ocean therapy, music therapy, that actually helps to support kids with those diagnoses, actually be able to calm their system down enough to learn some new things. So yeah, there's a huge gap in our education system when it comes to that. There are places that are filling them slowly, but there's a large number that go undiagnosed, have those challenges, you know, become part of the correctional process because they don't have answers.
yeah, and I don't know how it is in California, or even for that matter, Kansas City and North Carolina. I mean, well, I'm in North Carolina, but I don't know how it is in Kansas and Memphis and even in LA. But I know here we have certain schools that are designated as the troubled schools. So those are the ones that the
Yeah.
kids that are supposed to be in trouble are going to, and all along those lines. And that to me can be somewhat problematic. My brother actually works with so-called at-risk youth, even though I hate that term and everything, because I
Right.
think it kind of puts them in a box that they may not necessarily need. And I can relate to your idea of being an educator, because my mother was a guidance counselor before she got into some other fields, and I have aunts that were in the education field as teachers and principals until some of them left this planet in terms of passing on to the next divide and everything. But definitely they were very passionate in that education field. So education has been an important part of our lives. But I was just wondering your thoughts, Ms. Williams, about this notion of kind of, and I think Stephanie alluded to it, but kind of compartmentalizing people and putting them into a box, because I think we do a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
We definitely do, and it's a double-edged sword, to be honest with you, separating students in those types of categories, because a lot of times some students are just acting out for attention, but if the school doesn't know how to support that attention, they will send them to one of the specialized schools. Out here in California, we call them non-public schools. And they'll send them to that type of program. But there are other kids there that also have behavior issues that may be more detrimental to a child's life than that other child that you just sent over there. Because a lot of times what happens is they pick up behaviors from other kids because they're all in the same area. So you have 10 kids that act out in different ways. So, oh, I see Johnny over there's banging his head up against the wall, and the teachers come and they give him candy and take him out. Oh, maybe I should try that. You know, so it a lot of parents really do fight against sending their kids, or allowing, or agreeing to, not allowing, agreeing to send their kids to those programs, because that does happen. Kids do pick up other behaviors from other kids. And so, you know, those schools are challenging for that reason. Some schools in other states have answered the call by having this types of schools on site. So instead of doing a separate school, they keep the students in like a positive behavior incentive school, PBIS, on site, so that they're still with their peers, but they're getting the support, the behavioral support that they need in a smaller, separate setting, but still on campus, so that they're not isolated away from everyone else. So it really, you know, it's a double-edged sword because some kids need to kind of be separated so that they can get that therapy, because those schools have therapists on site that are available the whole time that kids are in school.
Yeah.
Whereas on a general campus, we don't have that.
Yeah, that's very true. Before I
So
turn it over,
you
and
really
y'all go
have to look at the kid and decide based on that student what they need and how that program can support them.
before I turn it over, and y'all can go a little bit over if y'all need to and everything, because I'm actually in my cultural arts center and I can stick around a little bit longer if y'all choose to and all on those lines. But just before I disappear and everything, and y'all can decide when y'all want to get Jean's song on and all along those lines, I was going to have a little bit of fun because Jean knows that we have fun on this show as well with some of the joking. Part of what happened with the dysgraphia is that it might have helped me get through Marquette, because I had teased you about Marquette and UCLA and the game and everything earlier. But it might have helped me when I was at Marquette because having that very bad handwriting, I am convinced to this day, and I'm in my early 60s now, that there were some teachers that might have given me some decent grades that might not have been earned because they couldn't read my handwriting. So they were going like, it looks like it's good, so I'm going to go ahead and
Right.
a B or a C. They weren't going to give me an A. I'm not going to say that they were going to be that generous, but they might have been like, it looks like he has a concept of what he's talking about. Not sure that I can quite read it, so I'll go ahead and give him that B.
That's hilarious.
But on that note, I'll let y'all continue.
That's funny. And he may be right. You never know at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because everybody does things so differently. And, that just made me think about, kids in sports, that weren't academically, performing, the way they should, but they pushed them and said, well, we need them on the team. So give them, not the grade they deserve, but a grade, that's passable, so that we can get them through school and get them in college. Well, that's really unfair to the kid. It feels good to them, but it's unfair to them because they're really not learning, at the level that they should be learning. So
that's true. Yeah.
Jean, you got something else?
Yeah, so we never did get an opportunity to speak about your bullying experiences.
Oh, thank you.
I got you.
Had to bring it back.
Reel them back in.
Exactly.
So, as an educator, what kind of bullying comes back to mind? Or, so I'll ask you this in a two-part question because I want you to choose with the time that we have. I know Mark said we can go over, and that's okay too. But when you read the list of the different types of bullies, what came back to mind for you? And then I still want you to touch on, not yet, but I still want you to talk about, so that the people can hear a bullying experience from an educator's experience. So the list.
Okay.
What came to mind as you read the different types of bullies?
So the funny thing about the list is, I want to say at least 2 months ago, late last year when we first met, I saw that list, and it did not hit me the same way that it did when I saw it 3 weeks ago. And it may be, I think you were saying, because you added some questions at the bottom that really kind of stir emotion in people to get them thinking about bullying and how it's impacted their lives. And so on the list, the question that hit me first was bullying of yourself. That hit me the most because I find myself doing that. And I didn't realize that I did it as much as I do until recently, to be honest. So that negative self-talk really has kept me from doing a lot of things that I've wanted to do. And that, come to find out, is a form of bullying. It's internal, but you're still bullying yourself, right? Putting yourself in a space of negativity and of doubt. So that was the first thing that hit me the hardest. And then coercion. We don't really think of coercion as a form of bullying, especially when it comes to our kids, because, you know, my kids are very headstrong, they're very strong-willed. And so I've learned to present my case and let them know that some things are not negotiable. If this is what we're talking about and this is what I'm saying we're going to do, then this is what we're doing. If I say to you, if I'm giving you an option, then you can choose, because
Yeah.
I don't want to get into, you know, a back and forth or trying to coerce you,
Yeah.
right, to do something because I think it's a good idea. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't want to get into it that way. And I don't want to bully you. So
Yeah.
these are the options, pick one,
Yeah.
as opposed to, you know, trying to put my will, especially when it comes to, you know, them going to college or doing a vocational school. Like, instead of imposing my will on them, we talk about what the options are.
Yeah.
And then the second part of that question, when it comes to bullying in the workplace or in the educational space, I want to say that it happens very often from a boss or a principal to staff. And because a principal is giving direction from the district to do certain things, you can have a directive and implement it in a certain way that doesn't come across as bullying, right? Like, if I have to be evaluated, you can come and evaluate me in a very loving and supportive way. You can come and sit in the back of my class with your notebook, instead of coming and pushing the door in my class, coming in, huffing and puffing, looking around. Like, all of those are like bullying positions that
Yep.
you're
Intimidation.
exerting your intimidation upon that teacher. Like, you better give me the best performance ever or your time here is up,
Yeah.
right? Type of demeanor. And so those things happen a lot. Fortunately, I haven't experienced it that way. I have experienced a boss basically penciling in my schedule, even though that wasn't what I was used to.
Yeah.
And that really, really, really made me very angry. So unfortunately, it was just like, well, she's the boss. But then when I look back at it, I'm like, I was really like bullied right there, taken
Yep.
advantage of, because that you didn't have to do that like that,
Right.
right? It was the way that she went about doing what needed to be done. It's the way you went about doing it that bullied me, not the fact that it had to be done. It's how you chose to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So many people think more about control. I'm the this. I'm the CEO. I'm the founder. I'm the president. I'm the CEO. You know,
Right.
I'm this is my title and I'm in control and you just do what I tell you to do the way I tell you to do it. That's the only way. And that's horrible. That's bullying, because that is not the way, you know, to treat people. That is not the way to do people. And it is bullying, you know, forceful behavior, it's intimidation, you know, making you fearful, you know, which is intimidation. But you know, that stuff ain't cool. Ain't none of that cool.
Right.
You know, and sometimes people don't even think about it until it happens to them. And then they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, you've been doing this for the last 6 years to other people. Now it's being done to you, and you like, whoa. You should have been like, whoa, 6 years ago.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
you want to add something else to that, Irisha?
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
It does happen. Bullying happens in education all the time.
So what about with students? Have you seen, because I see how things happen, you know, with the students, and how, you know, the adults are told to respond certain ways, or you can't respond to this when they, if they hit you, things like that. Physical bullying, you have to respond certain ways. Have you have you experienced that, bullying, from the students? Have you experienced?
So I have been fortunate enough to only have one real bullying experience with a student. This student was very aggressive, physically and verbally. And teachers are trained, especially in special education, to in non-invasive, hands-off types of training in order to work with students with behavior. It's called non-invasive crisis intervention programs. And so that teaches you the de-escalation tactics of how to interact with a student when they're in crisis. And so we use those skills to help de-escalate situations when students get triggered by things.
Yeah.
This particular student, we use those non-crisis, those crisis intervention programs with, and it would take hours to de-escalate him once he was triggered for, whatever reason he was triggered for.
Yeah.
He was physically aggressive towards people, scratching, biting, punching, pulling, kicking. And we had this student for a couple of years. And it's hard for teachers to, work with students like that within the bounds that you want to be respectful to a child, right? Because if it was your child, you wouldn't want someone putting their hands on, holding kids down, locking them in closets. Like, all of that stuff is not okay.
Yeah.
And so being trained in crisis intervention, also being trained in applied behavior analysis, right? Being able to set up a plan of action for when a student is having a crisis moment helps to decrease those moments over time. Unfortunately, with this young man, he was with us for 3 years in high school, and the behavior remained the same. And so it was very challenging to work with him. I loved this. Everyone loved him because when he was just being himself, untriggered, unbothered, he was a great, great kid. Once he was triggered, it was hours upon hours of aggression. And so it's hard being a teacher because you're not their mom, you're not their dad, you know what I mean? So you have to really approach the situation from an educator's perspective or from a therapist's perspective if you have that training. And so it's very challenging, very challenging.
Wow, I can't even imagine. I just know that I wouldn't be able to be a teacher. I mean,
a lot of people say that. A lot of people say that, and it's not true. And I want to say to you to not say that about yourself, because you actually do teach. You teach here on this platform, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you think of teaching, it is this thing of how you talk and you interact with people. You just have to pare that down to it being geared towards a child, someone with a younger, less developed brain.
Yeah.
But it can be done. I don't want to convince you, but I'm just saying.
Oh, you can't. I'm not going in there. I'm not going in the school system. It was easy. Okay, I'm gonna come back to that. I'm a peer educator working in high school, and yes, bullying from adults happens. it bothers me. We are supposed to set a better example for the students. Thank you, Gay. You have to often wait it out. It can be exhausting. That's the part for me. I can't when my kids were in school, it was different. Because their friends did then, and they still do, call me mom, and I still call them my son or my daughter. But it was different for me then because I was raising kids, and and I've tried, going back to, the kids, since my kids have been adults. And it's not the same for me. Yes, I do educate, and I educate adults. The topic for me is, is I'm so passionate to teaching and educating about bullying because that's my experience. Much of my experience and Jean's experience, and so I'm able to educate adults. But when it comes to kids, I'm not saying that I can't. I'm just saying that my heart is in a different place. And because of and I can teach kids about bullying, and I have. But it's just me thinking about being in the school 8 hours a day, 7 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Yeah, I can't see it. I'm just saying.
Definitely takes a special person to be in the trenches in a classroom for all of the things that you just described. It's not easy. And people go, oh, you have summers off and you have the winters off. And it's like, yes, to recuperate.
Yeah.
Right.
And
it's tough.
I see why y'all need to recuperate. Hats off to y'all. I ain't gonna be able to do it. I do it for a couple hours, going in there teaching about bullying or teaching about something else that needs to be taught. But like I said, 5 days a week for hours, I have no desire to do that. So
you're like, get in and get out.
Yes. Because they're listening. They're willing to hear.
It's me again. I had a question for Ms. Williams because the other
Mark.
thing that I work at and everything is, and Stephanie and Jean know this, I work for a testing company, and sometimes I have a problem with the testing company because sometimes we got to do jobs to pay the bills, and that's one of them. And there are various ones, but this is one on the East Coast. I just wanted your thoughts around the testing system, because that to me is another form of bullying, because I think that sometimes we pigeonhole them in these kind of standardized testing all along those lines. But as an educator and one that's coming from the West Coast, I was wondering your thoughts around that whole notion of standardized testing, which has become very popular even pre-pandemic and everything.
That's a great question. And all three of my kids would agree with you that testing is a form of bullying. They would agree because they have the mindset that just teach me the information, let me tell you what it is, and then let me go home. Because I just told you through my homework that I know how to do this. Now you're going to test me again? And then you're going to ask me about stuff you taught me 3 months ago? That's not equal.
Yeah.
That is not equal. So testing, and I tell them testing is hard because if I don't test you, how am I supposed to know what you know? Now, you can test a person and not have it count for or towards anything other than knowledge and improvement, right? Because if you teach me about the alphabet and then you give me a test about the alphabet, if I only know 5 of 26, we don't need to go back and do something different.
Yeah.
Right. So from a place of knowledge, yes, I agree with testing. From the standpoint of using it to determine outcomes for kids, that's a little different because as we know, most Fortune 500 companies have CEOs and owners that were C students.
Right.
And some of us that got all A's in high school aren't doing much.
Yeah. And one of the things that I run into is that sometimes there's a bias on some of the testing too that can be biased either around, as y'all mentioned earlier, urban and rural, or around race and a number of other things. Because if you ask somebody a certain question, the answer that you might get from, say, South Central LA might not be the same answer that you're going to get from somebody in Boston, but they're expecting the same answer. I mean, 2 + 2 is always going to equal 4, but there's some that are more subjective, and I don't know always that the instructors or even the people that are doing the grading are fine-tuned enough to know how to deal with those kind of subtleties. That's the word I was looking for.
Exactly. And they're not. Perfect example on one of the standardized tests, it's called the LPAC, which is the English Language Proficiency Aptitude, blah, 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 whatever the last letter stands for. But it's basically to test second language learners and see how proficient they are in English. Well, one of the questions has a picture of a saucer and a teacup. And the question
We don't have
asks,
that.
what do you use this for? What is this called? My own children who have only spoken English did not know the word saucer. They
Right.
said it was a plate,
Right.
which it is.
Right.
But if you pare down that category, it's a saucer. But we don't talk about that item that way in our home.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's go get the cup that I'm going to drink tea out of, or go hand me that cup, that's this or that. But it's not hand me the saucer with the teacup. So it has a lot of bias
Yeah.
in it because it talks about things that a lot of our students that are in that category that you're trying to assess don't talk about those things.
Right.
That's not part of their community. Now, I mean, I don't want to come across, racist or anything, but if you ask kids that are of Latin descent, something that's specific to their culture,
Right.
then yes, they may know that thing, right? Because there are, one of my sisters is really big into like Aztec culture. And so she would know what this particular vase is called.
Yeah.
But here in the US, it's a vase.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But in the Latin culture, it's a whatever that thing may be, like a cauldron or something.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm not from that culture, I don't know.
Yeah.
So you're trying to assess a group of people with some information that is not readily available to them.
Yeah.
And it's not right. Kids get stuck in being reclassified or not based on those biased questions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have got to stop this conversation. This has been so good. Oh my goodness. Galen, thank you for joining us again. You have been following us and commenting, and we enjoy you being a part of our shows. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And whoever else is watching, because I see some other people watching, but because there's no comments, I don't know who you are, but thank you, thank you, thank you for being a part of our show. Irisha, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And thank you guys so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Just am over the moon today.
Well, we are good. Oh, hey, Ebony. So thank you again. We are stay for Jean. Ebony, Jean has a new video. You got to see it. So whoever is there watching, we just ask that you stay and watch Jean's new video that was just released this week. So this is his second video. So stay tuned. And Irisha, after the video is over, if you would stay, we'll come back together. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We send you away with peace. Peace. Can't see my peace signs. Peace. Love. And we say, we send you much joy and happiness. Take care and bye for now.
The police took another life. Shots ring out, even though he had his hands held high. Yo, I'm sick and tired of walk from Brother Shaw got lines. Need to come together, set a plan, and then mobilize. Oh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do about all the hell that we're going through? Now stand up, shout out into the walls of Babel on your feet. Stand up, come on y'all, and let's make some history. Stand up, rise up and know you ain't gotta follow, you can lead. Stand up y'all, we can do this, you and me. Monsanto monopolized the whole grocery line. So we all gon' have 12 toes, 3 thumbs, 3 eyes. If we keep being sheep, these wolves are gon' rob us blind. Let's occupy our mind space, cause the revolution won't be televised. Oh, what are we gon' do? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do about all the hell that we're going through? Now stand up, shout out into the walls of Babel on the feet. Stand up, y'all, we can do this, you and me. Stand up, rise up and know you ain't gotta follow, you can lead. Stand up, y'all, we can do this, you and me. Oh, have mercy, mercy me. The government should nurture all that we need. When will all these wars be done? Hopefully before another moment has the money. Yeah. Before another mother has the one person. Shout out into the walls of Babel on the feet. Stand up, come on y'all, and let's make some history. Stand up, rise up and know you ain't gotta follow, you can lead. Stand up y'all, we can do this, you and me. Stand